Hey guys, it's Brandon. I wanted to do a recap of a Blitz game that I just played on, I guess it was ChessCube. I wasn't doing video commentary for it, but now that the game is over, I wanted to show it because it's kind of fun, and it shows a fun way to play against the Benoni defense. Many of you will have seen this way to play the Benoni before because it was popularized, or at least played a lot, by Chessexplained on his channel, and that's actually where I learned it. But for some of you, this may be new, and even if you have seen it before, I'm going to try to explain a few ideas in the opening. So let's see. I had the white pieces, and I played d4, which is pretty standard. Knight f6, c4, c5. d5, e6, the modern Benoni, and my opponent delayed the capture here on d5 for a while, but we eventually do transpose into the modern Benoni opening. So a6, this is a standard Benoni move, a4, just to prevent b5, or at least slow it down for the time being. So knight bd7, and now knight ge2. This is the move that sort of defines this sort of setup. The knight is going to g3 here, and this isn't the most popular way, and maybe not the most best way to fight for advantage in the Benoni opening, but it can be very, very dangerous, especially for Blitz. And it's not totally unsound. There have been a number of games. In fact, it has a very good record when you check the database of wins for white. And there have been some top players like Ivanchuk and Dreyev who have played this before. So my opponent now makes sort of a questionable move. He plays knight to b6. That's attacking the c4 pawn, but on the other hand, I'm looking to play knight g3 anyway, where now the bishop protects the c4 pawn. And this knight is sort of misplaced on b6 because it's blocking the b pawn, and eventually he's going to have to move it again to get it back into position. So knight b6 questionable. So g6, bishop e2, castles, castles. Now I played h3. The importance of this move will come into view later. And after rook e8, bishop e3, he took on d5. And I suppose I had the option now of taking with the e-pawn and just having a nice position with more space, but I wanted to keep it in the Benoni system, so I took with the c-pawn. And now you see we've transposed into this modern Benoni pawn structure, but with the knight again on b6. He's going to have to spend some time to move this knight back to d7 and then to e5, or potentially in the future c4 and knight to c5. So I'm sort of up more tempos than I really should be if this has been played totally accurately. So we see he even plays now first knight back to e7 and queen d2. The idea of this, of course, is to set up the bishop exchange here on g2 so I can have some attacking chances. And of course, this bishop in general on g7 is the pride of black's entire position, just raking down this diagonal. He'd love to play moves like eventually get in b5, a rook to the b file, put some pressure on the b2 pawn, and just in general sort of take advantage of these weakened dark squares. But after knight e5, bishop h6, queen c7, we see that this is a pretty standard setup for black in this sort of position. But the fact that the knight had to make a move, an extra tempo to come in here, means I'm slightly ahead in where I would like to be in this position. So now the bishops have come off, and it's time to play the key attacking concept in this line, which is f4. And the point now of we see the point of h3 having been played earlier is that the knight no longer has this g4 square, which may have been a nice place for him to go previously. So knight de7, and now the main attacking point of this f4 move is to play the move e5. Now here it's a pawn sacrifice, but the point is not to just sacrifice the pawn. The point is to play after d takes e5, f5, and the idea is, of course, black is not interested in taking with the f pawn because, well, obviously it breaks the king side structure up. The knight can take with check, then the queen comes into g4. So this sort of thing, of course, would be a real disaster uh, for black, probably. This sort of stuff. So I don't think this is. I really don't think this is defensible. I mean, mate in 1 here is just a threat. So of course he doesn't want to do that. And the other idea is that this square on e4 is now free, and I've got 2 knights that can come in here on e4 and create some dangerous attacking threats. So that's the point of this pawn sacrifice. It's a real sacrifice, but you get some compensation in attacking chances against the king. So now after f5, my opponent played probably the best move in the position. And if you ever find yourself on the black side of this sort of attack, remember this position, this move, e4, taking away the e4 square from my knight, opening up an attack on the knight here. This position is technically compensation, I would say. The computer thinks that white has compensation for the pawn here. Maybe is slightly better if played accurately, but the way I played it was not completely accurate. Queen g6, queen g5, just getting the queen in the vicinity of the king, looking to take, create some potential threats. He could have equalized or defended the position by playing queen to e5, which is a move I sort of missed. And I would still have compensation for the pawn, but this would have gone a long way to making this position more defendable. Instead, what he played was queen b6, which looks nice because it's threatening the b2 pawn, and then would be threatening the knight after taking the b2 pawn. But in reality, that pawn can't really be taken after I played f takes g6, h takes g6, and I played the move rook f4. And what I was counting on here, I'm putting pressure on the e-pawn with my knight and my rooks here. What I was really counting on was that after queen takes b2, which was played in the game, attacking the knight, I would be able to, and what I did, and remember this if you're playing the white side of this, put some pressure on the king with rook a to f1, which is what I played in the game, threatening knight g5 check, taking advantage of the pin. So it's very, very dangerous. In fact, I think it's just losing when I went over this briefly with the computer to take the pawn, but he did. Or to take the knight, excuse me. So now follows knight h5 check. Of course, the pin means he can't take here. And if he takes with the knight, then rook takes f7 check is very dangerous. The rook's coming in on the f-file. And you can see these pieces are sort of out of play and not developed yet, and not really able to help the king in the attack, which is really the reason why these pawn sacrifices work. Because I mean, I'm just down 2 pawns here. Well, now 1 pawn because I just haven't taken back on f7. But after knight h5 check, this is 2 pawns. Count them: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4. But again, these pieces here on the queen side are not participating in the attack, and I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pieces around the king. So it's very dangerous. In fact, it's actually really not defensible at this point, although it was defensible earlier. After knight h5 check, he didn't take. He played king f8. Knight takes f6 check, or knight takes f6, knight takes f6, rook takes f6. And the position is pretty grim here. It's actually just lost at this point. He played rook to e7, defending the f7 pawn. But there's a ton of ways for me to win here. I mean, I could even just take this pawn with check, not with check, but taking advantage of the pin here on the f7 pawn. But there's also queen to h6 as a potential move here, and I saw this variation here. And now if the king goes wherever the king goes here, really, I mean, check. And now either king to b8 or king to d6. the rook is falling, and then queen. And I was like, yeah, but that might drag the game on a little bit. I thought maybe I could find some easier ways to win. After queen h6, if king to g8, this is a fun move, which I actually saw in the game. I noticed, taking advantage once again of the fact that these pieces are not in play. The back rank is weak. I can actually play rook takes g6 here, and then if pawn takes g6, this is checkmate. So there's a lot of ways to sort of carry on here. But after rook to e7, instead of playing queen to h6 check, what I went for was d6, with the idea that if he slid the rook along the file here to try to maintain protection of the f7 pawn, then I would have queen to g8 check, and if he moves the king here now, this is mate because the rook is taking away the escape square for the queen, or for the king, and the pawn is covering this square here. So that variation I saw, and yeah, again, what's black really to do here? I mean, this is just an overwhelming attack. He played queen d4 check, just trying to get the queen into play, but just slide the king out of the way. And now he played rook e5, and after rook f7 check, king e8. There's actually 3 ways to win the game here. I was down to about 20 seconds and just only saw queen takes g6 check, after which, not check, but after threatening this mate in the back rank, and there's no way to prevent it. The computer just suggests giving away. It's mate and 3 forced, but only if you give away the queen and then play rook to here to stop the threat. So he played just bishop f5, and the game ended with queen g8 mate. But I thought, let's take a look at the other possible ways to win. There was also rook takes e7 check, rook to e7 check, where if the rook takes, then queen here is mate, and let's go rook here. If he goes here, then rook just comes to the back rank here with mate. So that's another way to win. And then the final way to win in this position would have been to play d7 check, where, taking advantage once again of the fact that the only escape square the king had in this position was this d7 square, either piece taking here leads to rook to f8 check. So I saw I saw what I played in the game, and with only 20 seconds left, I didn't look really hard. If you see forced mate, then just play it more often than not, even if there's 2 other technically more efficient, quicker mates. So yeah, it's a very, very dangerous attacking line. I just want to go briefly through. Let's get to the main Benoni position here. And remember, the idea is, when you play this, to get this battery going, try to exchange the bishop off. And remember this f4 and e5 line, the idea being to sacrifice the pawn and play f5 to take advantage of this e4 square if possible. And even if the opponent plays e4 himself, which he did, which is the best move in the position, you still get attacking chances along the f-file. Here I think my opponent could have improved by playing f takes g6, actually. Generally the rule is you want to capture towards the center, but in this particular case, probably opening up the f-file and trying to get the rook here at some point to defend the position was a tougher defense. So after rook f4, one more thing I'll point out: instead of queen takes b2, the computer suggests rook to e5 as a viable defense. And then I would be forced actually to play rook to f5, because after queen to h6, then there's this g6 move, I believe. There's no queen here because of the knight. So I think rook e5 was the last chance for defense in this position. At which point I would have had to play rook f5, and then takes check. I think this is still dangerous, but in any case, the point of this is my opponent got greedy, took on b2, and even sacrificing this piece on f1, excuse me, on c3, playing rook a f1, is just leading to an absolutely devastating attack. Remember, all these pieces coming up against the king, and it's just giving me time and a position for a massive attack for 2 pawns and 2 pieces here, again, that are unable to really join into the attack. So king f8, took, 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 and the game is really indefensible at this point. d6 pawn moving forward, and yeah, I mean, the game was just over at this point. There were so many ways to win. So, all right. So hopefully you guys enjoyed that game and learned a little bit. Just remember the knight e2 to g3 line and the f4 e5 break. f4 e5 f5 thematic pawn break. And if you're interested in seeing some more of the game, how it's supposed to be played, I will post some links to Chessexplained's recent Blitz games, some recent Blitz games by him in this line, because those are very instructive, and really is where I learned to play this line in the first place. So, all right, hope you guys enjoyed this, and we'll see you next time.